Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'd like to call the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee for Monday, August 17th, 2022 to order. First item is Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item is adoption of the agenda. I need a motion to adopt.
Motion by Romano to adopt the agenda.
Support Van Sickle.
Made by Romano, supported by Van Sickle. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Next item is approval of minutes dated October 11th, 2022. Need a motion to approve. Moved by Nard, supported by Haw. Any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is public participation. This is the first opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on an item which is on today's agenda. There'll also be a second opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak on any issue. Would anyone like to speak public participation? Going once, twice. We'll close public participation. Next item is budget reviews. First one is animal control. This is budget page C16. I need a motion to receive and file. Made by Zinner, supported by Nard. And we have our Chief Animal Control Officer, Jeff Randazzo, here to present. Hello, Jeff.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, all commissioners. So I was just going to go over some quick stats that we had for you, but the big change, or I wouldn't say big change, but something that I'm asking for in our 2023 budget is the refunding of our operations manager that was unfunded during COVID. So I'm asking is that you please refund it, so to speak. And it's just because we are very busy and we really need that position so that we could be more of a community outreach that we used to be. And just to give you some numbers of actually how busy we are, we're the second largest animal control division in the state, next to Detroit Animal Control. Last year in 2021, we impounded over 2,400 animals through our building. That being said, we also have a 92% save rate, so I think that's really important. We service the entire county of Macomb, excluding 4 communities. However, we do offer mutual aid to those 4 communities. Just our calls for service, we did 5,239 calls for service, and that's, you know, if we equate it to working days, that's about 20 calls for service per day. So that's really busy. I know we sold, you know, just at the front desk, we sold 8,752 dog licenses. This year in 2022, as of right now, today, we have already responded to 3,827 calls for service, and that equates to about 19 calls for service per day. And we have 7 animal control officers, 7 kennel technicians, and 4 dispatchers, and then myself, which I actually go on runs as well. So as you can see, there's a true need for it, and it's very important for the success of animal control. So that's what I'm asking for today. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you, Jeff. I guess I'll tee it up. I saw that on your capital expenditure plan for the next 5 years, you have a new facility. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and what the plans are, because I'm sure commissioners will have some questions.
Sure. We are requesting a new facility, and for many reasons, but one of the most important reasons is that last year in 2021, we performed 832 state mandated sterilizations to our animals. So by law, all the animals that come into Macomb County Animal Control, before we could adopt them out or place them into rescues or foster care, by law, they have to be sterilized. And so unfortunately, we cannot have a surgical suite in our current facility. And it's because of the way the HVAC system is located on our roofs. And the building's very old, it's cinder blocked, so we cannot even have a x-ray machine put in there. So every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we are paying staff to transport animals to and from local veterinary clinics, which to me would be better if we had them out on the road doing outreach, right? Whether you're animal control deputy, we want you into your service area quickly as possible, but instead we are having them transport animals. So if we think about being more efficient at what we do and being more community-based and having a veterinary clinic right on site, maybe we could offer low-cost services to our residents, which would be great. We could do our own TNR. Last year we did over 400 TNR cats, but unfortunately every single one of those cats were transported to another facility to perform the surgery. Then we have to pay for the staff to bring them back. So that's very cumbersome every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we're at their mercy, right? So right now, with the shortage of veterinarians, as maybe some of you have experienced, we're at their mercy. So if they cannot do surgeries that day, then the animals sit another day or another week until we can get them surgery. So our length of stay would shrink greatly for the amount of time the animals are spending at our facility. And that facility was built in the early 50s, and it was just consistently added on throughout the years. All in favor, say aye. No.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming, Chief. We had a chance to talk real quick before the meeting, and he told me to call on Vicky.
Right. She's going to hate me now. New fire.
Sorry, Chief. I didn't mean to sell you out like that. Vicky, I have a question about the cost and the donations. On our capital projects plan, it says looking at approximately $12 million in donations from nonprofits. Is there a plan in place to start capturing that money? The chief said we're at the very beginning of this process, so I'm just curious.
Correct.
Where we're at.
Correct. Good afternoon, commissioners. Yes, at the very beginning stages of that, but yes, our plan is to move forward with a donation program and work with other entities to try and raise as much funding as we can. I think everyone sees there's a lot of care, there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of support for animals within the community. So we believe that would be a great option to go. And I don't know if Jeff referenced it, but when we talk about the new facility, did you talk about the egg animals too?
No, not yet. But that's a good one.
Right. There's a huge need too, besides the domesticated animals, but with the farm animals for horses, cattle, things of that nature, there's really no one in Southeast Michigan that offers that service. But again, a lot of the calls come in, and a lot of the calls come in to Jeff and his group because he has a lot of contacts. He has a small barn on the side of his building, a pen like that. So some of it's being creative. We've talked to Ed Scott with MSU to try to partner with their programs as well and offer more of those programs that tie in with the community into that area as well within that facility if we're successful.
And we're doing needs research too. Correct. Yep. Yeah, so like Vicki said, I mean, that was a really important piece because today I know that I mentioned to one of the commissioners that we're going to St. Clair Shores right after this, and we're going to remove a potbelly pig. Well, there's nowhere to put it, but I do have a little barn with a little barnyard that I purchased on a grant. So that's important that we do talk about livestock and that they're included in that large plan.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Chief.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. Well, first a comment. I love that your supplemental sheet actually has real numbers on it. I'm a big fan of real numbers. We get a lot of supplemental sheets that says we're working on it. It's in progress. I like
Chief Randy
numbers.
has a check? No.
That's right. Numbers. Numbers are very good.
Right.
Can you explain to me, you said there are the communities that are not part of
your department,
Yes.
if you will. Do we have arrangements? What are the arrangements with those? What are financial arrangements with those?
So we do not do contracts. We kind of, if they call us for mutual aid, so maybe it's, can you help us with, our staff is the only staff that is certified for in-field chemical mobilization of animals. So maybe they have aggressive dog, injured coyote, livestock, something that they cannot handle, then we would go out into their community and help them and offer them, bring it back to our facility. We do hold animals for them because they have very limited space as well. So we will hold animals for them if we have the capacity to do so.
And we have no financial arrangement with them?
So we just offer them what we call a fee schedule. So if they do use this service, we actually have a fee schedule, and it would just kind of simply point out what that fee schedule would be. So there's no memorandum of understanding or any physical contract.
Okay, and then all of the cities and townships that fall under your department, do we have a financial relationship with them? Are they paying for service?
They are not, except for 2 communities that do, because they did have their own animal control, and they dissolved it because they wanted to have the county supply them with animal control. So those 2 communities do pay because they want a dedicated animal control officer stationed in their city at all times, Monday through Friday. And they do have access to us after hours as well.
Okay. You said there are 4 communities
That we do not service.
that we do not service at this point. Have we had any discussions about bringing them in? It would seem to me that one
Yeah. So
team.
as soon as we get that new building, that would be one of the things we're going to look into. Because right now, we do not have the capacity to do so.
Okay.
So that's our biggest hurdle that we're trying to face. With the building itself, we have every corner is filled with a kennel, and we have to really be conscious of what we call our capacity for care, right? So just because you might have an open kennel or a cage, you don't want to just put animals in it if you only have 4 kennel technicians working every day. So we have to be really careful about capacity for care, because we're number 1 in the state right now, and we don't want to, make sure we always stay there, right? Something we're really proud of.
Right. I've been to the shelter. We definitely need more
Yep.
space.
Yep.
If you haven't
Appreciate it.
toured it, you should. It's sort of eye-opening. And we provide great care, and that's where I get my animals from, so it works. I would say my hope would be that when and if we get this new building, and I do believe private fundraising for this is an easier ask than some other things. People like to give to animals. At the point at which we do have a new building, I think you all should, look at equalizing our services among all the communities. I mean, we have some communities that don't pay anything. We got a couple of communities that are paying something. We got some communities that we hope will not have to pay their own way anymore, but can do. I would hope that at some point we could figure out how to standardize that, either with revenue or policy or something that makes more sense than the sort of patchwork that we have.
Absolutely. And that was something that I inherited, and I think over the years, I know the county executive office and I have tried to balance it the best we could.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I appreciate your support.
Commissioner Nard.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Matuzek asked a lot of my questions, so the one that I have left is, when you get the cost of the new building, did you anticipate the cost of, I guess it would have to be another veterinarian, if you're going to put everything in one place, are you going to be hiring doctors to take care of the animals there as well? And is that cost included in these costs here, or you've not gotten that far yet?
So I think since everything's kind of still in its, the early stages of everything, we're actually, I know the executive office is working with an organization to kind of do a needs basis research to see what the need really is out there and what we could really is obtainable for us. So I think that's kind of where we're at. We just kind of were looking at some serious figures. I know we toured other buildings, facilities. Oakland County has a brand new facility, and so does Detroit. So Genesee County. So here we are in Macomb. So I think that's important that, we did go tour all those facilities, looked at the things that they did, what they wouldn't do again. So I think we're still new to that figure.
Okay, yeah, because I was just, thinking, if you're paying anyway for the animals to go other places, and then it seemed like it would be more economical for them to just be here.
Right.
And you got somebody in-house.
Yep, I agree with that.
Thank you, Chair.
And right now, we don't have a full-time veterinarian.
Let's see.
Chair Brown.
Thank you. This question is for Steve. The capital services line item actually went down for them. How did that happen?
Capital outlay?
I'm sorry, internal services, excuse me.
That's based on the numbers we get from the cost plan. So I can't tell you exactly why that would happen. Generally speaking, it's going to be based on utilization of the various department services. That number is coming from the 2020 plan because we don't have 2021 yet. That was the COVID year, so you'll see a shift among pretty much every department based on utilization of various services. Every department has its own, they call them allocation statistics of how we allocate those costs out.
So just an anomaly in that case.
In this
Generally-
particular case, there could be other anomalies with decreases in other departments, increases in other departments offsetting each other. I know I owe Commissioner Van Sickle a schedule of the cost of the indirect cost charged back by department. I still owe him that the board, that information.
All right, thank you, Steve. Chief, this time of year, we have a lot of sleeping deer on the roads, along the roads.
Yes.
Is it possible that, do you have the staff available to, you go out there Wednesdays to collect, but you could probably do a couple more times this time of year. Have you considered that before? Maybe you've tried it before and found out it wasn't effective?
Right, so Wednesday is the only day where we have, out of the 7 kennel techs that we have have 6 of them there because of their schedules that they work, because they're there 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, 7 people, and they share those schedules. Wednesday is the only day that we could truly spare somebody to go out there. So it's not that I don't want to, because I think it is important. It's just that Wednesday usually is the best day. So if you think any other day, we have 4 people, and don't forget, they're transporting animals to and from veterinary clinics. We have to pick up stray animals at local police departments, things like that.
Do you ever keep track of how many you collect?
I do. Unfortunately, I don't have that specific
All right, okay.
here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jeff, just looking at your budget, with the increase of services that you're providing, I'm just curious why your revenue isn't increasing. Your licensing and permits, your charges for services, nothing's going up. It's basically standing still, but you're saying that
So you
the
mean
department
like
is
the cost of
increasing.
licensing and stuff like that?
Correct.
Because other than licenses, right? So if we think of like board, so we impound a dog, right? And then now we're going to return the dog back to the owner. So if you look in 2021, we returned 822 dogs back to their owner. Well, the most of the time, those people cannot even afford medical care for their animal. We did all the vaccines by law, we licensed their dog by law, and whether it needed flea prevention or something like that, because I'm not going to send animals back out into a situation without getting all the medical care. The reason I do not increase those fees is because majority of the people, as you see over the revenue over the years, how much we actually took in, most people cannot even afford that. So I use a lot of grant funding to help pay those services for those people. And that's the only reason I do not increase those revenues, because most people, the licenses, we are the only one in the state of Michigan that has a smart tag. And so with the GPS locator on it, it does not cost me any more money, so I would never pass that on to the pet parent. So to answer your question, is because most people that we work with are going to be low income and not be able to afford that. And I don't want it to be so punitive in nature. I want it to be more that we're bridging gaps with our communities. We're focusing on pet retention, and we spent $60,000 in grant funding for pet retention. Because to me, that's really important, especially when a lot of people are going through a lot of financial hardship. I want to be, us in Macomb County, the one that reaches out and says, hey, wait a minute, we could help bridge this gap for you. You can keep your pet. I'm not going to hold it hostage for finances.
In regards to your capital outlay, I know you had $20,000 last year. What are you planning on the $20,000 for this year, for this upcoming year?
So I was trying to figure, like, new exam tables, stuff like that we really need, so that maybe we could do a little bit more of, some triaging for, animals. So it just kind of depends on where we stand, where you all stand, I guess, with our new facility, because I don't want to be spending, $20,000 and stuff like that, where I think I utilized every inch of that property with play yards, equipment for the play yards, stuff like that. So we're really looking at like veterinary care, like what could I bring into the facility and maybe do small triage stuff, so that's kind of what we're looking at. But I think a lot depends once the study's done with the needs research to see what I could do with it.
What about your surveillance system? I know you're in need of something over there right now.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we're thinking of as well, because we do have animals sometimes dumped out in the front yard, like the front gate, and we don't have a camera system that actually could work with that. So that was one of the things that IT had brought up to us, is like, upgrading that. So that was one of the things that we were looking into as well.
Okay. Seeing no other speakers, thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome, thank you.
I have a
Everybody
motion on the
have a great
floor.
day.
Everyone, please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay, next item is a combination here. So I need a motion to receive and file. This is going to be for the Health and Community Services, Health Department, Macomb Community Action, MSU Extension, and Senior Services. Moved by Nard, supported by Romano. Vicky, I think you're going to tee it off with Health and Community Services. And also, commissioners, before Vicky starts, you were handed a couple documents, one being the Macomb Community Action and the other one being the Office of Senior Services, which differ from what's in your budget booklet. And I know Vicky's going to address that as well. So, Vicky, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon again. It's been a while since I've done a budget presentation before the board, but here I am and happy to be here. Just want to give you an overview of the Health and Community Services Office and then the 4 departments that actually fall under that department. Health and Community Services was created under the charter, and there are specific areas under that department that we must perform, and those are public health along with environmental health, community service and community services, and then senior services. Before I get into the specific H&CS budget, I just wanted to talk about a few overarching areas that all of these departments are touching on. Obviously, we've spoken to the board, and the board knows about the H&CS VERC project, as well as the project in the southern end. All of these departments are located within the VERC and then also have a presence within the southern end of the county. So they are intimately involved in that process and have been and will be if that project moves forward. I wanted to touch on the IT capital project. I've spoke about that before, and I know Jaco presented that as well. That is that information technology platform that is greatly needed outside of any building to be able to centralize and standardize our intake system within the county. Obviously, that is applicable to more departments than the ones here today, but that program is greatly needed. Many of the citizens or clients that these departments see are seen in several departments across the county, and the type of project that we're asking for under the IT capital plan would greatly bring that all together, make it easier for the residents, create a greater presence in many different formats for people to access our services. For these departments, as you know and you'll see, many of these departments receive grants, and some of them are highly dependent on grants. I can tell you when you get to their presentations and you see an increase, especially, I think you're probably familiar now with the changes that were done with the PTA schedule. Many of their grant programs that they had to apply for were well before knowing about the PTA changes. So you will see less revenue because they couldn't include those PTA changes that they didn't know about in their grant application. So the idea is next year when they go to apply for those grants that they get every year, those new costs for their salary and fringes would be included within that ask. I know as some of you are all aware, maybe all of you, over the past year and a half or so, we were implementing changes to once again have the Office of Senior Services be its own independent department. When I first started at the county, there was a decision made to fold them underneath community action. We've since looked at that and for a number of reasons made the decision that that was not the best place for it to be, that it really needed to be a standalone department again. While there are some programs that certainly align with community action, there are others that have a different focus that are well suited to being an independent department. So that process took place or effective October 1st of this year. They are a standalone department. That was one of the changes within the budget that you'll see. And I apologize when the pages that are in the budget book are the correct pages that finance would like you to look at and adopt if you move forward with it. The pages that I think you were handed today, we realized what you had in the budget book really didn't give you a clear idea of what senior services was in the previous 3 years because they were under MCA's budget. So what Steve and his team did late last week was try to create revenues and expenditures for you to kind of have a more apples to apples comparison. So that's what you have in front of you. And then we did the same thing on the MCA side with the pages that were handed out today as well. What is in your budget book is correct, is MCA without OSS in it. The pages today were for additional information. And of course the department heads can speak to that as well as Steve and his team and myself. And then the last item is we did make some changes this year as well within MCA and their fiscal team. They had a fiscal team within their department, and we made the decision to move their fiscal personnel into the county finance department. There are a lot of efficiencies gained there. There's a lot of streamlining. There was a lot of conforming to more county finance department oversight. Steve has more people that can support that team as well, and vice versa. We also had, and I think it was just a natural inclination over the years, that the fiscal team in MCA had really crossed over a lot more into grant management and grant oversight of the actual projects. And had somewhat taken a larger role on that really needs to stay within MCA and the people that handle those projects on a daily basis. Those people that have moved over to Steve's budget, which you will see, I think he's presenting tomorrow, so you'll see those changes reflected in his budget as an increase. The grant funding for that fiscal staff is going to follow that team. So there's still grant funding that supports all of those people that have moved. But Steve will be talking about and requesting an additional fiscal analyst that is greatly needed between the Office of Senior Services and MCA to continue to support all the grant funding that they get. All right, I will now move into the H&CS budget. Again, I think as all of you are aware, starting towards the end of 2019, there were some personnel changes made within that department, and before we could get to any place to fill those spots within the department, we were hit with COVID. There's other outstanding issues where that department was somewhat less vacant. Earlier in this year, As you know, I was asked and tasked with becoming interim HNCS director to kind of take a more hands-on look at that department, see what we wanted to do specifically within that department going forward with the overarching department, as well as work with the departments underneath that. When you look at the area that this department covers, really responsible for a majority of the direct services to the counties really underserved. Many of these services are not provided at a local level. Health department obviously is the easy one. There's not a local health department outside of the county services. Generally, local jurisdictions don't have their own community action agencies, things of that nature. So a lot of that responsibility falls to the county level. I already talked about the grant funding or other sources of funding. All of these departments are dependent on that. Community action probably has the largest share of grant funding that they receive within the county. A lot of the services are complementary services, but what I've tried to focus on myself and then also with the departments is duplication of services that I think we need to continue to see efficiencies, and that they're not all trying to do the same thing or even competing with one another. And I think we all can probably agree that this department really needs to be more prominent within the county. It needs to be visible, and it needs to be highly accessible to the people that we serve. I know, obviously, it's a huge change in what we're asking for and presenting this year, but almost going from a zero starting point, if you will, over the past couple years. So this is our vision for the department. Obviously, you have the director's position, which is existing. I won't spend a lot of time on that. I am not intended to be the permanent replacement. So our goal next year is to find a permanent director for HNCS. New position that you will see is the diversity, the DEI division director. Again, we feel that's very important in the county. Human resources has a lot of functions or similarities, but a lot of their focus is on employees and about hiring and recruitment. With this person, we'd really like to have that person and have more of an outward-facing focus. And again, looking at the programs and services that we offer, are we being inclusive? Are we hitting the right people? Are we meeting them where they're at? And are they matching up? We'll complement, obviously, with the HR staff and work with the HR staff, but this is a good place and good fit that we thought for this type of position and title within the county. This person would also take on the One Macomb program. Again, that's over the past couple years, we tried to keep that going. Actually, Ernest did a good job filling in the gaps, but being that is really our DEI program in the county, we would like that person to carry out that program now and officially have it under HNCS. The new one, I'm going to smile and chuckle as I did as a couple meetings, grant manager, fiscal person, and meaning fiscal for the grants. I know at a couple meetings I was at, you talked about a grant person. I smiled. I already had it in here. But that goes to some of your comments. There are most of the grants that these departments get are grants that they get every year. So because of how they come down from the feds or the state, they obviously have to apply. There's a lot of work behind those applications, but many of them come down that stream. There are also then a host of grants that do not come in that fashion that have to be sought out. And really the one area where I think we haven't done a great job, and this is somewhat kind of countywide and coming from being here over 22 years, is really on that philanthropy side. Those are very hard to go after because they take a lot of work. They take a lot of relationship building and trying to meet the people and meet the programs, find what is out there, and then bring those back in. So I really see this person helping and assisting all of these departments with that. With the grant seeking, they can obviously also fill in gaps for grant and program management, some of the fiscal side, but do see this as an opportunity to take some of that off of our department heads, and they can concentrate their efforts on other areas. Another new position that we're looking for is an operations manager. Again, these departments do a lot of work in the county, run a lot of different programs and services. So again, it's a combined effort working across those departments. This is where we start to look at the efficiencies, where's the duplication, what are our gaps across the departments. They do a good job, obviously, of trying to coordinate with one another, but they can't possibly see everything either. And obviously, the director of the department wouldn't be able to do that alone with everything else going on. I think they can look as well for a lot of outside partnerships that we're missing that may not result in the grant funding, but again, are there just people we should be meeting with that we're not and that we're engaging within the community? There are internal processes and procedures that I think can be improved. Not every county department does everything exactly the same or has the same information or knowledge. We've discovered that. They will tell you that. You know, we've brought them along and tried to bring them into the mix through no fault of their own. It's just how it exists. But I think an operations person could clearly help with that. And then I think the operations manager would be very critical in the H&CS building projects as well, because whether or not we move forward with new buildings, there is going to have to be some change or some renovation that takes place. And this department, previously, there was an office located within this building. This department and entity will be located at the VERC going forward. That is the goal as well. Administrative assistant position, I know it wasn't funded in 2022, but it was one of the existing open positions. There was a director, need to have some sort of assistant, so new, existing, it was there previously. And then lastly is just another clerical support person for office assistant senior. Again, we envision a lot of more events taking place, websites, social media, surveys taking place in the community. Walking through our supplies and services line item, within that line item, probably the highest funding is for one Macomb. Currently, one Macomb has I think it's $30,000 in our appropriations budget. So that has been transferred to this department. So it's no longer in the appropriations budget. That's probably the largest item that makes that up. Conferences and training, the number there, I'll admit some of these without history of training or that was a guesstimate. If you have 6 people in the department, something reasonable that they would need to go to, especially the management type of staff, repairs and maintenance, that's your office equipment, contract services listed in there for $15,000. We know in the past we've used interpreter services within this entity, and again, if we're looking at doing any type of survey within the community, could see it being used for that. Internal services, finance calculates, and Commissioner Brown or Chair Brown, I know you asked the question. I saw that was low for 6 people, and Steve answered that question. That's really looking back previously, so that's probably a low number there. And then last item is the capital outlay, and that number was put in there for furniture, if we are able to have additional staff. And then lastly, just a quick update on the VERC and the HCS project from when I presented in September. I think you all know we're still working on that, and really the latest update or last piece that we kind of had in that really has to do with the JJC facility and getting a cost to see if we built a new JJC to be able then to place the mental health services within the JJC. We are working on that. We're in touch with a consultant. We have another meeting coming up next week to talk about that and progress on that project. So again, we're moving forward and hope to have a better update before the end of the year on those projects. And with that, that is my presentation, and I will take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Vicki. Commissioners, so let's just stick here to each line or each budget page. So why don't we start off with C40? Does anybody have any questions related to C40? And I see Chair Brown first. Chair, do you have a question on C40 or is there a different budget page? Senior Services? Okay, so we'll wait until we get to that part as we go down here through the through this whole section. That's the last one for Senior Services. Commissioner Matuzak. Well, we got technology today, Commissioner, so I can look right at my screen all day long. Commissioner Matuzak, is your question related to C40? Yes. Great. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the reorganization that you're proposing is really important. I think it will eventually provide better services in a more efficient intake sort of way, in a more coordinated way. I think ultimately it saves us money. It does, however, make comparing budgets really difficult because without knowing exactly what line is moving from what other budget into this one, it makes it more difficult. So can you speak just a little more about the coordination aspect of all of these programs and what this section of the budget does for that?
Sure. So just to outline, your page C40 is for H&CS only. There's no money within this budget for senior services,
Right.
none of
no,
that.
but
That's
this is,
just
I see this
just
is
for
more the
6 people.
coordinating.
Correct. The
sort of part of
overarching
this.
department that was created. Correct. Right. So yeah, I mean, I see it somewhat how I laid it out is a good majority of the time of the director and this person and being in it for the past 9 or 10 months is really getting to know these departments and what they do and really being, you know, that spokesperson and that voice, not only going up to the exec's office, but then also outward as well within the community. So I think there's a number of aspects, at least that I took on and looked at, and conversations that take place, and I think the department heads that can attest to that many times, you know, one, VERC project, we talked about that. How can you share space? Do you have duplication of rooms over at the VERC now? Can you have more meeting space or things like that? So there's the physical aspect. There's the program aspect. I'll, you know, maybe give you a simple example that actually just came up on Friday. Ernest and I were having a conversation about a grant that they're going to be taking on for diapers. And there was some hesitancy to take on that program just because of all the work of that the staff is already doing. But they made the decision that they could take it on. And he mentioned a couple of the different ways that it would make it easier and not be so staff intensive by partnering with other agencies. And I happened to say to him, why don't you have a conversation with the health department and the WIC program? Obviously, WIC's involved in that. It's an area that Ernest didn't think of. And again, that's not Ernest's fault. There's a lot of programs out there. So that's really where I see that going and meeting collaboratively with those 4 departments all at once. Hey, what are your programs? What are your procedures? I can tell you within the OSS budget, these departments ask for more personnel than what you have presented, which I think is common in the budget process. One of the positions that Sheila had asked for was a part-time grant manager. So I had already had a vision of this full-time grant manager to assist the 4 people. So I explained that to Sheila and said, sometimes we know the difficulties of hiring part-time personnel. I'm going to be asking for this full-time position. So will that fill your need? And she said, yes, I think that's a great idea. And again, there's programs that, again, OSS and MCA is another great example. Most of, or if not all of community actions have some sort of income threshold to them, but they serve seniors. However, there's programs that Sheila offers and wants to offer and expand that don't have any income threshold to them. And it's about keeping seniors in their home, keeping them healthy, keeping them active. So I think it's looking for those synergies between the department and making them come together or excluding them. You know, we talk about sometimes too, we also don't, as much as there's grant funding out there, and again, I've been doing grants since I was 20, we also don't want to take a grant just to take a grant. So I hope you understand that. That's not meant, you know, that we want to turn money down, but you have to make sure that you're getting the grant, not just because, oh, there's money out there. You have to look at the service. Does it line up? Does it line up with the staff that we have? Do we have financial support? Is there another department that's maybe doing the same thing where we don't go for the same grant, but we partner with them? So does that kind of answer?
Yeah, I think that's the really critical part here. We offer a ton of services. It's hard to keep track of all the services we offer, but having one sort of point of coordination, I think, will make us better at what we do and better serve our residents. I'm also encouraged to hear you say a grant person to start to go after some of the private philanthropy. Macomb County is woefully behind every place else in terms of private philanthropy. The foundations don't think about Macomb County as a place to give money to, and they should. So I'm happy to hear that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Vicki.
Hello.
I lost track as you were going through. How many new positions did you detail out?
There's one existing technically, which is the director's position, and then there's 5 new ones, so a total of 6.
And how many people are in the current budget, or the 2022 budget?
1 person, myself, the director.
Do you have room for all these people to be, all the new staff to be office space?
Yes, we would actually put them within the existing VERC facility now, make minor renovations and modifications to that space. So, but there is space available. There's some overflow or extra space, if you will, that health is occupying now for their clinics.
Are those minor modifications detailed in the budget someplace?
When I spoke with F&O, they said that there would be enough money if you're looking just at paint and carpet. We're not looking at doing anything fancy, if you will, just because we know where we're at with the VERC project. So that would be on the interim basis if we needed to create those office and hire those people. And then depending on what happened with the VERC project, then it would be enveloped as part of that larger project, or again, if we only did the health department moving over there, then it would be incorporated as part of that project, for which there's also money in the capital fund plan.
And if we do go from 1 to 7 people in this department, I know we touched on internal services before, but it would seem that cutting internal services by half of last year and increasing the staff to 7 from 1 doesn't seem to mesh.
Correct, and I think we agree with that.
Commissioner, the internal service charge relative to the indirect cost plan is on a 2-year lag. So if these new positions are built into 2023's budget, those new cost chargebacks will be reflected in 2025.
So, okay, so regardless of what we actually use in 2023, you're going to build a department based on their 2021 costs?
Correct, which will be minimal because there's only 1 person in there and so on and so forth. And we don't have that plan yet, so we don't know if it's actually going to go up or down from 2020. But you're correct. The 2023 charge will be based on 2021's actuals.
I understand that rule to a point, but, okay.
Well, and we have to, and the reason we have this 2-year lag, we have to charge based on the cost plan for grants that actually are reimbursed for those costs, can point to and say this is an official verified document, not something we came up with in my office, for example.
It would seem there'd be a factor in there for reality.
Doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So we haven't all, the numbers in the cost plan are audited, tie into the financial statements and all those sorts of things. That's why there's a lag.
Thank you for the explanation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Steve, actually, I got a question really quick as well. So in regards to this budget, so this is general fund dollars that's increasing it by about $700,000, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we're taking general fund dollars and putting it into this budget where it was not previously.
Correct.
Okay. And then Vicki, I think you stated this, but your supplies and services, what was that again?
A large portion of that is the One Macomb program and moving that from appropriations budget to under this budget.
Got it. Okay. Chair Brown, your question still on senior services? Yes. Okay, we're going to get there shortly here. All right, next here is Health Department. So this is budget pages C37, 38, 39. And then special revenue pages D5, 6, 35 through 38. So I know Andrew's here as well. So Andrew, anything that you want to add that Vicki has not already stated about the Health Department?
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners, and special hello to Commissioner Matuzek, as she sometimes gets overlooked. So special recognition this afternoon for you, Commissioner. I can look to my right, so I'm doing all right. Thank you for the opportunity to present the budget this year for the 2023 ask for the Health Department. We've tried very hard with the staff, Patrick DeTine, our finance manager, and our deputy health officer, Krista Willett, and myself, meet with all of our programs to really look at all of our programs across the board and really do a deep dive into what services and support we can provide to the community. This year's budget, we've done a good job, I think, of minimal ask of really being fiscally responsible for our budget. As you can see, our revenue, we're recommending a slight reduction in revenue, and that's really due to the fact of COVID and the loss of clients because of COVID. We are still, for a lot of our programs and services, recovering from COVID. That still persists and goes on. Some of our clinic services are significantly, not at the levels to pre-COVID levels. And we're still working to get those individuals back. For example, our WIC program is still all virtual because that's a federal program, and they have a waiver that they are not to be in person. It is, a lot of individuals during COVID went elsewhere for services or have not sought out medical or healthcare services at all. Trying to get those individuals and inform them and educate them to get back to us, to be able to serve them is critical, and something that we're really focusing this year on. The biggest change for revenue is the charges for services, which I just explained the rationale behind that, of why that is anticipated. Our expenditures, I'm really proud to say that a modest ask of only just under 4.5% at 4.48%. And that includes, the biggest one is personnel with the PTA changes, which we definitely support. One of our main challenges is retention of our healthcare staff, our nurses. It's very competitive out there right now to keep nurses. And so we definitely support, with all of our positions, what HR and the exec's office has approved to do with bumping up salaries. We need to do that to stay competitive, to keep the great staff that we have here. We've seen already some challenges with turnover in staff, with staff leaving for additional flexibilities or opportunities for career growth, for salary and income for their families. We've seen quite a bit already this year. So I hope that change, if it's approved, will definitely help in that area. But besides personnel expenses, Every other line item you'll see there is actually, we're looking for a reduction in expenses. We're really looking at reducing any unnecessary need for expenditures. So we're very proud there for those numbers to go down. And I think that's why you see, even with a very aggressive salary increase in our personnel with salary and fringes, that overall, it's not that big of a difference with our expenditures of only less than 4.5%. The one personnel request that we are requesting this year is a division director position over at the medical examiner's office. In my position of almost 2 years now, it's become clear that we needed to focus more attention on the medical examiner's office to support growth with quality improvement, operations, and running it the way that we should. And to do that, that requires additional support. And this is where this division director will aid already just a manager position that really focuses on running operations. So all the extra things that we need to do, looking at contracts, looking at expenditures for supplies, are we getting the best deal out there? This division director can really help assist with some of that in-depth look. We are also looking at welcoming additional programs like Oakland University's Forensic Nursing Program and other school programs into the office to develop that talent that's coming out of school so they can be our next staff and to forge that relationship. We have a fantastic office over there. If you've seen it, it's a newer office. You're welcome to come by and visit anytime you'd like. We can set that up. But this crucial need for this division director is really needed over there with the increased oversight that we are doing now with that office. It also helps us to move forward with things like our annual report and also address needs like autopsy report lag time, which we definitely want to focus on this next year. In terms of our health grants, this year again was different because we had some significant COVID funding coming through our COVID IMS grants and also our ELC contact tracing and wraparound and testing services. That made a big difference in the revenues that we received compared to prior years, pre-COVID time. So we're still getting quite a bit of funding through those programs. We continue to have additional support for DIS, disease investigators that we continue to support. And we're continuing to do vaccine outreach in clinics today even. We're doing significantly more this month and last month than we were prior because of the bivalent boosters that continue to be asked for. And then also we're doing also our flu clinic. It's flu season, so go get your flu shot. I hear a couple of coughs out there. Make sure it's supposed to be a bad year this year, so go out and get your flu shot this year. The other grant funding is in line with some of the past years, so no further bigger changes there. With some of the other, we've lost a few small grants, one-time fundings, but then we've also gained in other areas as well for grants. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. And just to confuse things, is it okay if I go back to Vicky's group? I forgot something there.
Sure.
Thank you, Vicky.
She's still here.
Andrew, everything's good as far as yours, from my perspective. I noticed on the goals, Vicky, you had pursue an IT technology platform software. A year ago, we spent a lot of money in the health department for some very large software, I remember, because I voted no on it. How is this different than that? And I noticed this isn't built into the budget, so take me through that line item a little bit.
Sure.
Thank you.
The IT technology platform is within the IT capital budget, so it's on the capital plan is where that expense is, I think, over 2 years. is how we set it up. And actually, it's a type of program that will be complementary to the program that we purchased through COVID and through the health department. That is a vendor that offers a platform that we're looking for that would be more broad-based and is outward-facing. Many of the components of that system that we have now through Qualtrics, many of those areas were very specific or specific questions, if you will, to the health department. But the idea would be is for such a system of Qualtrics, if someone is already in that system or that type of system, when either they go to enter the system, look for a different service, or we do on our side, their basic information would already be in there and be able to populate and pull up. So it's actually complementary, and they have a platform.
So, I think I understand what you're saying. So basically, it was an intake system that that you brought in, Qualtrics, and this is additional components for the same larger system.
Correct. And yes, and then larger also for meeting the needs of more. So
All right,
yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Wallace.
Sorry, was not prepared. So first, I would like to say that I think you guys are doing a really good job on your outreach. It seems like every place I go, I see the health department, so that's really good. I picked up a little lunch bag that was packed with goodies, definitely hand sanitizer and all that, so good job. The question I have is the position at the medical examiner's office. So I think I was kind of getting lost in the details that you were giving. That's not someone that's actually going to be in the office doing like watching over day-to-day things, right?
They will be located at the medical examiner's office. And they will be assisting with some day-to-day, although that's really the manager's role. I want this person to be more high level with looking at, how do we do more additional outreach? How do we look at improving quality improvement? And really integrating that into the office more than what it already is.
Okay. And then the manager that is there is, just overlooking what's happening in the office, making sure things are not going to be in any newspapers or anything like that. Okay, wonderful.
We do not want to be in the newspapers unless it's a good thing that we've achieved something.
Absolutely. Okay.
They were responsible. It's a 24/7 operation. Just the nature of those services. So the managers, a big chunk of what they do is keep those tasks going. Assigning the investigators that are there, making sure they have a schedule. They're always working on the schedule, making sure we have coverage, making sure they're working with our clerical support staff to get the information they need for ordering supplies, things like body bags. Those are all tasks that the manager right now has to do, which leaves very little time for those extra duties that the division director could really accomplish and take over.
Right. Okay. That sounds good. I do have an event in Mount Clemens, I think around Mount Clemens, that will be in the beginning of the year. So I will be reaching out because I think it would be great to have the community see that you're there and ready to help in any way you guys can. So thank you.
We'd love to be there. Thank you.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I second what Commissioner Wallace said. Every event I go to, I see a health department table, and I always stop and chat with them for a while, and it's a good thing. I also see community mental health and a couple other places showing up. This is a very general question, sort of is related to a lot of the things we're talking about. Now that we better understand how to sort of manage the COVID epidemic, what's the next big thing out there? I mean, we know these grant things sort of run in cycles. For a while, all the funding was about lead paint and lead in water lines. And then it was about, it just changes all the time. And so I'm wondering, are now people sort of stepping back from COVID and thinking about other things we should be concerned about? And are we thinking about those as well to be more proactive into the future?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. And those are the questions we ask ourselves every day there. What is the next thing, or what are the things that we need to look at that were there prior to COVID and are still there?
Right.
The opioid epidemic, overdose. We have a really, I think, a great team. I can't say too much because Vicki alluded to a team and some work that's being done there, but we're really excited about what some of the discussions of how to address that and really be a forefront leader in Macomb County that you'll be hearing shortly in the coming months that we're really excited about. But it is that. I think it's water quality issues. Those haven't gone away. People are still concerned about, you just saw in the newspaper most likely recently about Lake St. Clair again with sludge and algae growth. That's most likely, those are nutrients that are fueling that. So education around our water resources and environment, climate change, getting back to some of those things that we had to leave because there was no choice but to go to COVID, and we needed to do that. It's also our services, getting people back in the door and reminding them that those services that they haven't been utilizing for a couple of years now because they couldn't, or we weren't available, those are now available. It's also working with our other agencies, community mental health. There is a huge need with mental health resources, behavioral health, and that's just not community mental health. That is health department, that is health and human services wide. Because we need to start talking about mental health the same way we do about physical health as well. So we've done quite a lot of work with Dave Pankatai and CMH, and we're going to continue to do that. Obviously, the need, I think, has been identified in the schools. That's it. That's a huge thing. We've talked about that quite a lot with COVID, and COVID funding, and can we transition some of that COVID response money for the schools to hire, social workers and therapists in the schools. And I think that has been something that we have been promoting, is that we need to be flexible in the funding that we get in the grants, that it's tied to certain things, and it's so frustrating because we need it for this, or we need to respond to monkeypox outbreaks, but we can't because it's COVID tied to COVID requirements. So that's probably a long-winded answer, and I could go on and on about this, but it is all those emerging topics, are still there that we need to get back to, and we know they're there. But we're really excited about it because we need to get back to what we were doing before COVID.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair Brown.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, you've got a big job because so much time was absorbed with COVID that we've lost our focus, not because we wanted to, but because we just didn't have any choice, like you said.
Right.
And there's a lot of work to be done. The division director and his role overseeing the medical examiner, which is pretty much what he's there for, to make sure that we don't have any more issues going on there that cause us embarrassment. But there's another thing that's going on with the medical examiner that I've heard from the prosecutor's office in terms of the problem of when people die. They may have had a crime in Macomb County, but were taken out of the county for care, die over outside the county. And there's issues getting the body back into the county where the families and the investigators can do what they need to do surrounding that case. I'm not asking for an answer today, but that's something that I'd like to see. That I met with the deputy executive about this subject over the winter, and we recognize it's a sticky issue, but it needs attention. But it needs attention because our prosecutors doing juvenile crimes and so forth brought it to my attention, and we had to follow up on that. It didn't really get brought to closure because other things intervened, but just put that on your radar.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd be happy to set something up with you, Commissioner, and look at that.
Another area, Commissioner Wallace mentioned seeing the health department having a table at all these events. Well, that's really good, but you know what? That's not near what it used to be. We used to have senior outreaches in every commissioner's districts with vaccinations available for the senior populations. There were senior clinics, senior outreach health clinics in every commissioner's district throughout the county. Because while you and Mount Clemens may have opportunities, because being in the close proximity of the health department, up in the north end, and I suspect in the south end's got their south end senior center, there's pockets where people just don't, it's not as easy for them to access our health department's many services where they're at. I'd like to see the department and the administration do more of that outreach, and let's revive that. I think that's important. And it'll help you with your goal about trying to get people aware of what's going on at the health department, what's available, and doing full-blown education, not a table with a few brochures that people pick up in a bag and they go through it. Oh, this is nice, but actual meaningful, getting your flu shot, getting your testing. Many lives were saved as a result of what they were doing for many years, and we got away from that for a variety of reasons, budget primarily, but we're not in that position anymore. And I think that would be a good initiative. It's a win-win for everybody involved, and we can afford it. We can afford to do that, and if we need to put money in the budget to do that, we should, because there's just so much going on. There's just, you mentioned, you were describing the things you wanted to get back to about the other things that are going on in the community. What about the hepatitis? The hepatitis was a major outbreak. What happened to that? I'm sure, did it go up, did it go down? I don't know, but there's just a lot of things going on in the health of the public that would be reassuring to know that the health department's out in our communities, out in our districts, in the north end and in the south end, in the east and the west, and not just here in Mount Clemens. So think about that, Vicki, and I think that'd be an excellent thing to do, and the public definitely would like it. It is definitely a need. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Andrew.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
You piqued my curiosity a few minutes ago when you used the term digital outreach, which I believe was in connection with the new position in the ME's office.
I might have misspoke if I said digital outreach, but are you referring to doing more outreach with, in the community? Is that what you're?
I'm referring to what you said. I thought it was about the position in the ME's office, which I found sort of curious. So maybe it was just a misspeak on your part.
Sure. I think what I was meant to say is really, I was talking about working with community partners like schools to get more school students in to observe the medical examiner's office. And to do that, you need contracts. We have to make sure that liability, MOUs are signed in place. We also have to schedule that and work on that. That's tough for that public health service manager to take on all of that. And that's where this division director is going to be crucial in solidifying those partnerships and strengthening those partnerships. So when I was saying about outreach, that's really what I was hoping that they would do. And in terms of digital outreach, we're always looking at utilizing technology. I'm a big proponent of that. Commissioner Farrington brought up Qualtrics. We've actually, not just in the medical examiner's office, but across the board, we're utilizing Qualtrics, not just for nursing clinic programs, but we're looking to use that for things like household hazardous waste collection, where it was a first come, first serve before, and you'd have to wait sometimes very long time. Now residents can schedule appointments utilizing that Qualtrics system, which is going to be really a really cool thing that they can cut down on the time they have to wait, and it's an important service that we provide.
Yeah, but they're not scheduling appointments for the ME's office.
No, they're not. No, they're not. But I think there's other ways that we could use Qualtrics. There is interaction with families to view bodies and to set appointment times up for them to come to the office to identify family members. So there's a lot of different ways that we can use Qualtrics in that area. And I think that division director will help us identify those too.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Andrew. Let's
Commissioner.
shift gears a little bit to water monitoring. You know how I roll.
We still have to meet, Commissioner.
I know we do. I'm looking at the special revenue fund for the inland beach monitoring and the qPCR sampling, and I'm looking at the dollar amounts, and it seems like the the high water mark, pun intended, was 2021 for both of those items. The inland beach monitoring was around $6,800. The QPCR was around $36,000. And then when you jump ahead to this year's recommended, the inland beach monitoring is at 4, so about $2,800 shy of the high mark. And then the QPCR is about $14,000 shy. Is there a reason that we're not pumped up to those 21 levels?
The D5. Thank you.
Yep, D5, I'm sorry.
No,
That
no,
would've
you're
helped.
good.
I'm just rambling, it's fine. D6, actually, D6.
Gotcha.
Is there a reason why we're not up to those dollar levels yet? Or are we doing a gradual increase? What's the thought
So
there?
we go after every dollar we can. I can tell you that, from the state, that we are one of the highest funded local jurisdictions because of the work that we do and leading the way with QPCR monitoring. However, the state sometimes has to look at when a new programs come on elsewhere, they have to split that pie. And so our slice gets a little smaller. And I think that's what this reflects, is just that we need to be a little bit more competitive with maybe looking at how else we can fund that, or better ways at reducing costs, either through QPCR fees, which is expensive, but I think it's a necessary investment that we've really have to look at, trying to answer the question of where are the sources of contamination coming from that affect us in Macomb County. I think we all want that answer. Obviously, we work very closely with the Public Works Office to look at ways that we can really boost that monitoring. But I think that's just a reflection of a little bit of a reduction in the grant that we received from the state.
So, not to cut you off, all of these dollars for both of those are state funding, grant funding, they're not general fund funded at all? Piece of it?
There could be some staff time that goes into that program.
Okay.
That's out of general fund dollars, because the grant usually just covers the cost of the lab fees.
Okay. So if we found a way to get some more dollars towards those programs, it would be worthwhile?
Yeah,
You would
absolutely.
be
I
able to
think
utilize those?
Once we have that meeting, maybe we can talk about, a sampling plan. We can talk about what we're doing and our approach, and maybe we can talk about how to go after some additional dollars to support that.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Commissioner.
You've covered several areas here. I wanted to speak about mention that people coming back or not coming back. There are still, I keep coming across people generally in their elder years, but they don't really want to be. There's a lot of elderly people who are out. They're out doing everything, but there are X amount of them. They don't want to be in groups of people. They've been aware of what happened with people their age or older than them. They've heard the stories from years ago, and they're just not. They're around, but they don't want to eat at that table with groups of people. They don't want to be in a big party. Everybody wants them to come. They're always looked up to and all, and they say, "Thank you for inviting me," and that's just the way it is. They don't want to go to stores unless when busy times, things like that. It's just they're still afraid. They're just being cautious and maybe wise. Yeah. But no, I don't think just for COVID, for colds, for anything. Yeah. I think since it seems to be well for us now, it's early in the fall. It's going to be the fall. People are sniffling and going through things now. I think maybe everybody just has built up their immune system. Maybe people are, I always like to encourage people personally to talk to their doctor about what alternatives, vitamins or things for the GI tract being in a good place to take. I never would suggest someone to not talk to their doctor before doing that. That's very helpful for many people. And the algae, I didn't see that algae story, but we just had some people in here. So I've spoken with Channel 7 about the situation. It's bad. It's bad. And talking to Doug Martz and talking to Candace Miller over the years, the recent time also, they really believe that it's coming from too much E. coli from Oakland County. The people in Oakland County say they don't have any problem, everything's fine. But we're at the bottom of the end. We're at the bottom, so we're getting it. And it's coming down at a certain point, and it's going downriver. It's just the way it is, and that's what that stuff is. So I do believe there's a way to take care of it. And some people are looking into situations and ways to handle that. And I think we should have hope. And I think there's ways to deal with this. The major problem is stopping the actual sewage dumping, the overflow from Oakland County. And that's a major problem. And it has been for many years. But yeah, there are pictures that show it in time. You look at the different stages, you can see it. You can see it in the little area, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You can just see the stages of it. It's bad.
Mr. Chair, point of order. We're on a budgetary hearing.
I'm done, Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Andrew. You listed a number of conferences and trainings. Many of them are through the MDHHS. Are there any grants or stipends for those required trainings? Have you looked into?
We look at going after any funding available for training conferences. We feel very strongly to support our staff in those, and I think it's important for staff to get back to those. We've gone a couple of years now of not really attending conferences in the health department because of COVID. Not only because we were busy, but also because of the safety. A lot of the conferences were canceled because of mass groups of people gathering. Typically with the MDHHS conferences, it is a very, very low cost. Sometimes it's $40 per person, and that's it. That usually covers the lunch fee. So those are usually pretty affordable. Some of the national conferences are a little bit more expensive, and oftentimes there's grants or scholarships that we do go after.
Okay, so which one of these would you say is, I guess, the bulk of like the 700?
I think it's really spread out over all those conferences. We tend not to send too many people to the larger conferences, so it might be just one or two people. But obviously, that can cost more, upwards of $2,000, let's say, is a marker. Whereas the smaller conferences, the $40 conferences, we can probably send maybe 5 people to those, and they usually carpool in a county vehicle to save dollars even with that too. So it's really, I don't think one conference is a big bulk of that. They're really spread evenly.
Okay,
along.
great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Andrew, a couple things. So I'm looking at, and Steve already knows my question because I've been asking it to every department. I didn't ask it to the animal shelter earlier, or animal control earlier, but in regards to what you spent in your 2021 budgets. But in your department, there was over $1.8 million that was not spent in your budget that was allocated to you. I know Steve's looking into, or maybe he has the answer already, but maybe Andrew has the answer. He's pointing to Andrew, so he's already prepped you for this question because it's getting across the county that I'm asking the similar question to departments that have pretty large surpluses. So that's my first question. Why was that not spent, and what is it specifically related to?
That's, and not to blame everything on COVID, but that's really the truth here. Because of the amount of grant dollars that are coming in from those COVID dollars, that offset county cost allocations and change that, as well as personnel expenses. That's why I was here a couple of weeks ago, obviously, with the request for the x-ray machine. That was because of COVID grants, a significant amount of funding, millions of dollars coming in because of COVID response. That really, really sent us into the response mode of COVID, and some of those other expenditures that we would normally do we weren't doing because we were responding to COVID. So some of those other service-driven expenditures were not there, simply. And that really explains the amount of money. I don't know,
Okay.
Steve, did I do
So
that?
in last year's, with your current employee count, so you have 163 positions in your budget. How many of those right now are vacant? Approximately.
Question, and I don't know the answer to
Okay.
that. I can get the answer back to you.
Because I'm looking at your budget, and then I'm looking at your expenditures by service, and the one that jumps out at me is your clinical health services. So in 2020, it was just over $3 million. In this year's budget, it's over $6 million, so it's doubled. I look at your employee count for that department, and it's gone up by 3 individuals. So what have we done in the course of a couple years that we've gone up $3 million? And I always try and find the good questions to ask after everyone else goes, so.
Yeah, Commissioner, that's a good question.
Well, we'll let you look into it. It's a big
Yeah,
number,
I'll look
obviously.
into
I
that
don't need an
I'm
answer
sure
on the
there's a
spot.
good
But
explanation
that's
for
something
it.
that's jumping out at me. I love what Commissioner Brown had stated about what we used to do. And when I'm looking at this, I think this is where we used to put it. But if we're not doing that anymore, what are we doing and why is there such a large variance? And that's what I need to understand. Sure. Also, in regards to the medical examiners, you know, you're talking about that we need another manager position, but you never said that we have, you know, more deaths or there's more going on in the department that it's warranted another individual to be in there. Simply that we could be doing things. And I'm just wondering with that department, because we've had so many changes over the course of the last few years, maybe that's something that we do need to get an opinion from a third party, how we can make that department better. I don't know if that's warranted or not, but I think maybe that might be a better direction to go rather than just hiring another manager. If there is or is not an increase in deaths, you know, in the county, and that's
There
what
is,
we're really.
and it's a good question, Commissioner. 2019 to 2020, we doubled the number of deaths. So we were close, just under 6,500 deaths in 2020. 2021 saw a little bit of a reduction, closer, just under 6,000 deaths. And it's not just because of COVID. You know, there was a drop in COVID deaths, but we're seeing significant still numbers of overdose deaths that we were talking about. And that's what I was talking to the Commissioner Matuszek about, that we need to get back to some of that services and trying to curb that. That is still there. That has not gone away. The other thing is cremation permits skyrocketed and have still skyrocketed over at that office. They do over 6,000 permits a year now. That was half of that easily pre-COVID. So it has gotten drastically busier, more cases over there, and I'd be happy to get you those numbers.
If you could, because I'm looking at your licenses and permits, and that's only gone up like 20, well, let's just say here, it went up, and then it went down, and then it went up. Sure. So, you know, just the correlation of the data relative to what's actually happening in these departments is what I'm getting at.
Sure.
Okay, seeing no other speakers related to the health department budgets, I think we're all set, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, next is Macomb Community Action, and I believe this is one of the handouts as well. And Ernest, you have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioners. Well, as you've seen me over the last couple of years, Macomb Community Action has been one of the departments at the forefront of the pandemic. And you see that reflected here in our budget, especially when you look at the budget over the last couple of years. You see a tremendous increase and decrease, and I just want to describe a couple main points of our budget here and a couple themes that you'll see. I'll go through a couple of the relevant pages, and glad to take any questions you have. In general, as Vicki stated, as you heard from Andrew and others, the main request for funding increase in MCA is related to the PTA schedule increase. And again, we're glad for it. The county support means a lot for the employees that have been in the trenches these last couple of years. Just similar to hospitals and nurses in the health department, we've seen a lot of burnout, a lot of staff turnover, a lot of early retirements, and to retain our existing staff and attract new staff into a field at this time is very hard to do. So we're very excited, and we hope that the PTA schedule increase will help our departments retain the capacity and attract the next generation of public servants that we need in the Macomb Community Action Department. That's the main increase you see in our budget. We do request one new position related to our community development division, and that might not come as a surprise to you. If you remember, I keep coming back here with budget amendments related to the CDBG. I think last time I was on number 6 related to the 2020 CDBG. We need extra support to help us manage all of the multi-year funding, all the extra ARP funding. Some of that is eligible through 2030 to be spent, monitored, and reported, and will have to be monitored for years after that. So again, the main increase is the PTA schedule salaries. The main request is one new position, the admin coordinator in community development. And the largest request we have, I think Commissioner Farrington, the other meeting you asked me if we had enough funding to support our food demand. No, we do not. We're asking for $500,000 to support our food program. And I can tell you, I'll probably be back here in so many months letting you know that we've successfully got that into the community because it is a tremendous demand we're seeing across the county. Again, as I described to you, all the way up in Memphis, all the way down to Centerline. We're serving the community with food pantries. And so those are the main themes we're seeing. But I will mention, especially with the food pantries as a topic, you've seen the news about a recession looming. We expect, even though the pandemic's winding down, we will see a lot of families coming out to the pantry throughout 2023. Some general trends that I want to point out to you here, as you'll see across our pages, we do see a decline in some of the surge of pandemic level support. On page D29, you see we went from $17 million to 42 all the way up to 79 at the height of pandemic. We're easing our way back down, but we're not over yet, and we have a lot of funding related to the American Rescue Plan that has multi-year funding that will continue to extend, whether that's some of our SARA program, whether it's CSBG or our Head Start program. The other thing you'll see is a large pending increase for weatherization. Some of our position increases that are related to grant funding are for that big home repair, weatherization, and energy efficiency program. Going over just a couple of the budget pages, A19, that's that one admin coordinator position you'll see related to community development. A21, you'll see that's our increase of $2 million over that special revenue fund. A24 is the one of note here where we're having a $1.2 million increase over our 2022. That's the PTA schedule increase. That's what brings our general fund request up to that higher amount. In general, what you'll see throughout the budget is a little bit of forecasting uncertainty. So when you see something that's going 23 to 25, oftentimes if it's that stable number, it means we've received American Rescue Plan dollars. We have a long time to expend them. We can't tell you what next year or the following year's trajectory is. We can tell you that we have some funding and it will go back down related to it. And when we look at staffing transitions, obviously you have those 2 extra pages related to the Office of Senior Services. So if you're referring to this budget, make sure to look at those supplements. Otherwise, I can talk you through those changes. Regarding new funds, I did want to point out again, you will see the Balmer grant. We are getting some private philanthropy. You'll also see the Department of Labor Education and Training Administration. It's abbreviated as DOLETA. That is a congressional earmark we received from Congressman Levin that we're working with Michigan Works and Macomb Community College on. As Commissioner Van Sickle has mentioned, looking for ways to support our residents who are in crisis with some paths to self-sufficiency. That is $500,000 from congressional appropriations to work specifically at extra workforce and job training supports for residents that are coming into our offices. And we're very excited about that. And then, of course, you see some of those position changes, but again, nothing significant there that you haven't seen before. I'm glad to take any of your questions.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Ernest. So full disclosure, I serve on the Macomb Food Program, which is a nonprofit organization. And the Macomb Food Bank, which is part of MCA, has a MOU with the nonprofit. So if it's okay, Ernest, if you could talk a little bit about that agreement, and then I can ask some questions and maybe get some clarification. The first thing regarding the special revenue, the line item Macomb Food Program, there's a $300,000 shortage, so it went from $4 million to $3.7 million, correct? So there's a drop there. If you could talk a little bit about that. You mentioned the $500,000 request. If you could point out where that is, I'm assuming that, would that be under contract services?
That comes in through the general fund request overall, but let me just say, I know Vicki had mentioned that courting philanthropy is a difficult process. It takes a lot of time, it takes relationships. We're lucky to have a long-established relationship with the 501c3 food program. That is something that they have exclusively supported Macomb County and our food bank across the county operations. And we will be making that philanthropic request from the nonprofit because, again, we need all hands on deck in this situation. The decrease you see in funding there is actually larger than you see. We're seeing less emergency food assistance funding from the federal level, but what you're not seeing there is that our supply chain is constrained and our purchases purchase less food than they usually do. So we have to do our purchases up to 6 months in advance from the USDA. They just opened it up. There were only 6 items we could purchase from the USDA commodities program. So that money is going down, it's also purchasing less, and we're seeing a restricted use on that food, which means we have to use more funding, more philanthropy to purchase just the basic needs that we already have in our food programs. So we are seeing a reduction in funding. We're prepared for that. What's out of our control is the supply chain, the delays, and the constraints on ordering, which really exacerbate that decrease in funding.
So I guess my bottom line question is, you know, we as the Board of Commissioners, I'd really like to know how we can support the food pantry because, as you mentioned, there is a great need and it's just going to continue, especially with the rise in prices at the grocery store. So I'd really like to know, you know, what we could do as a board to support our food bank here. And perhaps not have to rely so much on the philanthropic dollars of the 501c3.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I'll tell you, last meeting I was at with you, I talked about the Reach and Resiliency Grant, where we're going out and delivering some food, partnering with new food programs like Mobile Missions, who's doing food delivery. You know, making more accessible existing pantries is a big way you could support us. So, you know, if you're offering to increase the budget, I won't refuse it. If you're offering extra support for transportation, extra support for pantries and food, it's something that we could always use. But we're also looking to be creative in the ways that we deploy that. As you know, we provide a central food warehouse for regional distribution. We only operate one pantry. The over 70 pantries in the county are through community partnership and support. And so I'd say that's one of the ways all of the commissioners as ambassadors in your municipalities can help Macomb County and Macomb Community Action as a department. Talk with your local nonprofits, talk with your community centers, talk with your churches, talk with your civic organizations about how they could link in to the county food program. And so we can have more locations available that are more accessible for our residents when they're in need.
Okay. So if you could just walk us through the $500,000, like what page it is, there's a lot of supplemental.
I think the $500,000 in general is related to the general fund increase, and it would be used directly on food purchasing. The only thing that we're looking for isn't staffing, isn't warehouse, isn't equipment. It's just to supplement.
So is that a part of the supplies and services?
Yes. Can you tell me which page you're on?
D3. Mm-hmm. And that would be the $20 million?
I am not sure.
Maybe Steve could.
Yeah, well, and there are two things there with the calendar year and the fiscal end year. Thanks, Steve.
Now, D3 is the Community Development Block Grant Program, so really where you're going to see that, Commissioner, is on D29, which is where the bulk of the MCA programs are at.
Okay.
So and that will be, the cost of the food is in the supplies and services line
Supplies and
item.
services.
Correct.
So it sounds like all of these funds just go into one fund? So like the philanthropic dollars, they go into the same account and then it just gets redistributed?
No,
Or
not at all. Steve keeps us highly compartmentalized. We have several organizational keys, as they call them, and different object codes within each funding. This is a broad presentation across the department, but no, if you'd ever like a specific printout, I'm happy to give it to you, but we have highly compartmentalized service areas with each of our grants recorded in their own area and their own expenditures. So of those supplies and services, every single program under MCA, every grant we receive, has its own supplies and services charges.
Okay.
The two can never meet.
Got it. Thank you so much, Ernest.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Chair.
Chair Brown.
Thank you. Good to hear from you again, Ernest.
Thank you.
The supplies and services are up to almost $3 million from last year. What's driving that cost up, increase?
Well, again, it's really a broader category than it first appears to be. For every single service we provide, they might have supplies and services. One of the biggest things driving that is the supplies and services for our home repair program. That's the energy optimization one I often refer to as weatherization, that does the home repair, the insulation, those fixtures. That has a larger supply item than most of our other ones. However, some of them have larger service billings. And so it really all depends. That in itself is such a large grouping across the department. I would be glad to break it down for you by our services, whether it's our food service, or our home repair service, or our Head Start program. All of those have a lot of supplies and services in them. And so that roll-up is sort of a combination of every single program we operate.
But don't we have a budget to limit how much that number goes up?
It really depends by grant. For each grant, for our home repair program, we just got good news that they're increasing our average cost per unit, which will allow more supplies and services through that grant that otherwise would have been restricted.
I understand what you're talking about. Okay. And contract services is going up $74,000. You adding a position there? Is that what that's about?
No, contract services, our largest use of contract services across our grants is also the weatherization program. That's one where, again, the county's looking to do what it can do best. And we hire people to audit contractors that do home repairs. We don't need an army of people, carpenters and electricians and plumbers. We need somebody that knows how to bid out the work and audit the work, and we contract out the rest so that we're not as vulnerable to these grant surpluses like we were in the recession and the pandemic.
Your budget increased 14% over last year. That's significant.
Yes, it is.
I mean, why? I mean, what's driving that?
Well,
it's all these. I know all those subcategories, obviously, but
well, in general, I can tell you we're still seeing the wave of the pandemic. If you look at that D29, we went from 17 to 42, all the way to $79 million, and now we're just coming back down. And so we do have a lot of one-time funding. A lot of the COVID funding, is eligible for multiple years. One of the community development funds, the home grant, got an additional home ARP supplement that's $6 million, and we have till 2030 to spend it. So there's a lot of noise within this. You can't really compare apples to apples because there are so many special projects and additional funding related to that one-time COVID funding in here.
you've got a lot to manage, and you do a good job keeping it all straight. I appreciate that. Steve, can you come on? I got a question for you. Maybe you could help us shed some light on the budget, this budget in particular. There's a lot of grant dollars funding this program. How much general fund revenue goes into this budget rather than, and then it's compared and contrasted to the grant dollars that fund it? Maybe that's a better way to look at it in terms of
if you look at page D29, Commissioner, it's $5.3 million for community action. And then if you take into account the Office of Senior Services, which in prior years was included in MCA, that is another $2 million.
And that was also on A24. That one's summarized, which I was mentioning, is that 5.3 is a...
how did that compare to the prior year?
Significantly higher. In 2022, it's about $4 million, so it's increased another $4 million. As
So
everybody's-
doubled. General fund
Well, the
contributions
PTA
doubled.
changes plus support, continuing support for the food program and so on.
But the general fund doubled in the contribution.
In the proposed budget, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, appreciate it.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about Head Start, which
Yeah.
usually my questions are. It looks like the staff number is going down, but the overall budget is going up. So I wanted to know about the staff going down. Is that?
It's a great question, Commissioner. And actually, that's a little confusing because it's the part-time teacher aides going down. What we did was we converted a bunch of part-time positions into full-time positions. That was also for competitiveness and retention. We find it adds increased quality in our classroom delivery and the relationship with the kids and families. So yeah, we're taking the teacher aide part-time way down to convert those to full-time teacher aides.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. Definitely want to have the staff that's needed in the classroom because your number of students is not going down.
That's right.
And I think that actually is it. I was a little concerned,
Okay.
but now I'm good. Thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Long afternoon for you. Huh?
Yeah, that's right, Commissioner.
Just two quick questions. I'm going to go to senior citizens chores, cities. You dropped that about $65,000. I take it this includes all the chores that you do for the senior citizens, but why did you get that drop in $65,000 from, I believe it was 2022 to 2023?
Part of that is commensurate with what the cities offer. If you remember, a couple of years ago, we came before the board because AAA 1B had discontinued their funding support for the chore lawn and snow program.
Yep.
And so again, it's always relative to what the communities offer. You know, we just had Warren deciding they wanted to increase their offering for it. And sometimes people keep it the same or keep it less. That in itself was related to just some money we didn't spend. And so we're truing it up with the actual cost and administration of the lawn and snow. But the lawn and snow program is always variable depending on which municipalities opt in and how much they choose to give. We hope each of you can reach out to your municipalities, let them know about the program. We have an economy of scale when we have more people enrolled, and we hope to increase that number with each municipality we have.
So you're saying that somewhere along the line, some of these municipalities are not pony up, and that's why there's a decrease?
In general, that would be my assumption, because the county itself, you know, AAA had funded some, the county had funded some. We cover the administration, but it's each municipality that opts in to whether or not they want to utilize it and how much they want to utilize that program.
So when they opt in, the amount of money they give, is it strictly for that community, or is it in a general fund that you use for all the communities?
Oh, no, it's only for their community.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, the other question I have is, I don't understand, what is this smart mobility management? That's $96,000 you want in 2023. What is that?
Well, that's just related to SMART in general, the Regional Transit Authority.
I know it is, but why the $96,000?
That's funding that SMART is looking to give to us to help us operate some of our SMART Connector buses. We do the SMART Essential Medical Transportation. We also do it for veterans and adult day. So we provide a range of SMART services, and that was one we had applied to SMART for to help support our transportation around the county.
How come we never had it before?
We have received that support before, and so I think that may be an issue just with how we recorded it, whether we thought that was new funding or existing funding. As I mentioned, the county compartmentalizes all of these budgets very strictly. So we have previously received SMART support before. I think that's a little misleading to say that we've never received it before.
I'll take that as an answer. Thank you, Chair.
Ernest, actually, my question is more for Steve. It's It's more of a, I guess, a request, just in regards to all the transfers, or what our total cost related to general fund dollars that we're putting into all these programs, whether it's MCA, senior services, prosecuting attorney, sheriff. I'm looking at them all here. Could you provide us a breakdown of what the transfers are for each one of those departments for the special revenue?
What they are, meaning how much is going toward personnel versus supplies?
No,
or
just how much we're putting into each one of these in total. Because I mean,
all right, just on one schedule, so you don't have to piece it all together.
I mean, because
Okay.
I'm trying to just figure this out,
Yeah.
and it's, I know you
Right.
just can summate in Excel really quick.
Yeah.
And give
yeah,
us
I could
what
do
that number
And
is.
I do want to stand corrected on what I just mentioned to Commissioner Brown. The general fund support between OSS and Community Action for 2023 is 7.3 million, and it was 4.1 million in 2022. So it's an increase of 3.2 million, not the 4 million I mentioned. Just want to clarify. Still a significant increase, but not 4 million, it's 3.2.
40%.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. Just want to clarify.
Yeah. And that's not even including any of the other ones that I'm asking about, so that's
Correct.
where I'm getting at. Okay, seeing no other questions for Ernest. Ernest, you're all set.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, so that takes us through MCA. Next is the MSU Extension, and Ed is here. Ed, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for taking the time to hear from me this afternoon. Compared to what we've all already heard today, I think my budget is relatively simple. The main thing I would draw your attention to is that we are requesting an additional clerical support staff position going into 2023. Just a couple of highlights of some of the things that we've been working on here recently. Many of you are familiar with the gypsy moth issue here in the county, and so that is an ongoing program that we've continued through this year. We sprayed 825 acres this year for gypsy moth. The MSU Product Center, which helps entrepreneurs take ideas for a food-based business from idea to the store shelf, essentially. We're currently working with about 55 clients, and Macomb County is constantly in the running, typically between Oakland, Wayne, and Kent County for the highest number of clients of any county that we work with throughout the state. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of is the work that we do with the county treasurer's office. In almost every case where there is a tax foreclosure, those individuals are required to at least do a consultation with MSU Extension in order to figure out what it is they need to do to effect repayment, prepare for their show cause hearing, or what have you. Last week, pardon me, last week, I believe this committee heard from the treasurer's office, and they were referencing about $1.6 million in revenue coming in from my half to pay back taxes. And that was earmarked to about 250 parcels, specifically of residents who had requested those funds. And about 62 of those were a direct result of our involvement in working with those residents and getting them connected to the My Half funds. As a way to help people stay in their homes. Additionally, another 70 My Half applications have gone out through individuals working with us, not connected to tax foreclosure, but still connected to financial hardships related to COVID. We continue to do all kinds of work with families who are facing hardships. Those who qualify for SNAP or FNEP benefits receive services from us in the form of our nutrition and physical activity coaching and classes, as well as financial literacy coaching. And our 4-H program continues to function and be strong. This year, one of the highlights of the program is we received a grant from Apple Computers to the tune of about $10,000 worth of equipment. And so that equipment was used all around the county. We worked with several elementary schools as well as the Cairns Community Center, which I believe is located in your district, Commissioner, to provide programming that introduced youth to coding and cybersecurity and robotics. And we're really envisioning this as an opportunity for workforce development for the future. So we are requesting a clerical office support staff position. One of the things that we've seen over the last couple of years, in 2020 and 2021, we were under pretty severe COVID-19 restrictions from MSU. And so we halted our in-person programming and events, and everything moved to online. Our doors at our office were closed, and we were seeing people by appointment only in order to accommodate that. But we've come back, and those restrictions are no longer in place, and we've seen a pretty dramatic uptick in traffic into our door and people wanting to find out more about the services and programs we have to offer, people being referred to us. And so we've just seen that uptick in the workload, and we also have a couple of projects that are going to be underway. If this is approved within the IT budget, we're going to be looking at an archiving and digitization project for our paper files. I believe all of you know the web page presence for the county is being revamped, and we're in the process of building out our new web presence within the county's web page. And so we're looking to this position to really help take some of that on. In addition to that, if we can find a person with the right skill set, ideally, we'd like to also see someone who can help us better utilize tools like social media. That is one thing that I think we've just kind of historically struggled with. And I think the last thing that I would kind of mention with regard to that position we're requesting is the elephant in the room for us is that about 3/4 of our existing support staff have over 20 years in with the county. And there will come a time when those people are going to look to retire. And so we're hoping that this position can help us kind of stave off the brain drain and all the organizational and institutional knowledge that leaves when people retire to help us bridge that gap and have good continuity of operations. So again, thank you very much for welcoming me today, and I'm open to any questions you might have.
Commissioner Wallace.
Man, I'm just not on it today. I'm sorry. So my first thing, your social media, you may want to look into an intern, someone that is coming out of college or is still in college, like a sophomore. Last summer, my daughter did social media for the Jimmy John's. And unfortunately it was unpaid. So I still had to pay for everything for her, but she did get great experience and, loved what she was doing. So, and she was able to teach, the people there what needed to be done so it can continue on. So I think that would be a good way to get someone in and maybe have them come back. And really get to know what you're doing there. Secondly, I think I've talked about this over and over and over, but maybe I'll just keep it off. I'll talk to you after this meeting if you don't mind sticking around.
No, I don't mind.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I would just, in response though,
Yes.
is your daughter currently available?
She will be looking for another internship. She's at University of Kentucky right now. But even there, she runs track, so she's working with their athletic department with their social media, so she may be able to help you.
Okay.
I'll keep you updated.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Commissioner Nard.
Hi. I heard you say that I guess you're looking for people to take on people that may be retiring. Have you thought about going to the different high schools, like, for instance, Lincoln High School and Fitzgerald High School have great students coming out, going into college, but they may be a good fit for that. I mean, I believe I was talking with the superintendent there where they're looking for colleges to come in or places to come in to talk with them. So maybe you want to start with either one of those schools to look for that. I'm very big on students coming out of high school, because not everybody, let's face it, is going to be college bound, but that doesn't mean they don't have a skill set that you may need. And then I'm really interested in putting things like this in high schools to prepare them for college, for things like this, because as you know, we're all going to get old one day, and we want quality people taking over after we're done. So that might be a good start, and then I'll kind of mention that if you could stick around, and I'd like to get some more information from you.
Sure. Yeah, I really appreciate that suggestion, and I'm wide open. I will happily stop in and visit a local school or other organization to talk about this, because frankly, social media is one area that I think we could do better. And I think I'm relatively young, but I don't do it as well as my teenage daughter or anyone else in that age group I've ever met. So I'm wide open to that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. This is not a plug for Commissioner Wallace's daughter, but I strongly support the use of Macomb County High School and college students as interns or possibly as part-time people to do things to help them further their education and possibly gas money or whatever. But anyway, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So Commissioner Van Sickle and Commissioner Wallace and Commissioner Nard, there is opportunities to do that. So if we have some young people who are identified or some places we can go to get them, it may not necessarily be through this general fund, but through some MSU dollars or various programs, we could certainly accommodate an intern. Happy to do it.
Ed, the only question that I had, in regards to this additional position, the one FTE, what's the total increase to your budget related to that?
Directly connected to that, it's about, okay. I'm going to let the expert answer.
All in, Steve.
65,500.
Okay.
And while
That's why Steve's here.
while I'm up here, save me another trip. If you have your budget, your previous question, C63?
Yep, that's the listing.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yep.
Beautiful.
I was going to follow up with you after the meeting. I found it. Okay. Seeing no other questions related to MSU Extension. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you all very much.
Next is Senior Services. That's D41 and D42, and also the handout that was given to everybody today. Sheila, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing me out about our budget this year. I appreciate it. One clarification on the updated budget that you received. I just want to clarify that our mission is different than Macomb Community Action's mission, and that is to promote aging well in Macomb County. And our goal is to provide services and supports so that people can age in place, meaning they can age in their homes with the supports that we provide, where they raised their families and worked throughout their lifetime. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit. Also, it adds to the discussion and the decision to move out from under Macomb Community Action, which is an income-based. Their programs are income-based. The Office of Senior Services is age-based. So anybody 60 and older receives services from our department. I anticipated some of the questions about the increase in general funds, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I thought that might be a discussion topic. In the previous couple years, we received additional funding for meals throughout COVID grants, also carryover funds and supplemental funding. And we were able to serve more seniors with that additional funding. That funding has ceased, and we're in planning for our next budget. we had to keep that in mind. So to compensate for the loss, we, at this point, are planning to reduce dinner meals by 50%. So we're going from 400 dinner meals to 200, and lunch meals by about 20%. Dinner meals traditionally have been provided to seniors who are in great need. So they not only need one lunch meal, they also need a dinner meal. Even with the general fund support, we will likely have a waiting list for Meals on Wheels, which is unfortunate. The general fund that we're asking for is supporting the nutrition program, so further reductions are not necessary. We don't want to have to cut any more meals from our budget or from our services. We're hoping and expect to get some additional funding as we have in the past, but it's never a guarantee. So we had to take that into account when we were planning our budget. We just completed a 3-year grant cycle with AAA 1B, and we received flat funding. So we did not receive any increases in funding for the next for the 3-year grant cycle. Also, they increased the cash match requirement. So actually, we're paying more in the cash match for our grants. As all of you know, the cost of staffing has increased, and food and gas has increased. So that directly impacts our nutrition budget. So increased costs for staffing, which again, as Andrew had mentioned, we completely support the increase in the salaries for our staff to retain qualified staff. It's been very difficult for us as well to keep staff on. And when you lose a staff person who's been around for a long time, they have a lot of historical information and knowledge that we really are invested in maintaining, or retaining, I should say. Our staffing costs have increased. We recently took over the management of our Meals on Wheels drivers. They were previously in a different department and division. We really looked at the cost effectiveness of having them have a different administrative structure than what we have, and we took on all of those staff and management of those staff. So you'll see that increase in the budget. We also hired a case manager in January. This is an unfunded position. We had a great need, and it was based on the need that we were seeing in our senior community to have additional case management services. Our grant does not cover that position. However, we put that position in to meet the needs of our senior community. We also have an unfunded program. Our Friendly Caller program is not funded through our grantor. That came out of the need through the COVID when we experienced that crisis. We had a lot of seniors that were in need to have someone reach out, call them, check on them, make sure they were okay, see if they needed anything. And so that program evolved out of COVID, actually. So now we have volunteers that come in weekly and reach out to our seniors to check on them, see if there's anything that they need. But again, that's an unfunded program that we developed. Throughout COVID, we've been continuously growing. We're working on our technology. We purchased 100 tablets for our volunteers and for our paid drivers so that they could enter all of their information as they make home visits and deliver meals. They can enter that information electronically. That information then gets transported directly into our electronic record system. That saves a lot of staff data inputting off of, we used to use paper route sheets. So that was a big innovation that our, department took on. We're also looking at becoming paperless. We're still using paper intakes and things like that, so that's costly. So we're trying to get away from paper documentation and using our electronic system to directly input the data. So with that said, I'm open to any questions.
Commissioner Nard.
I'm over here.
Oh, sorry.
I heard you say that there were a reduction in the meals.
That's correct.
What was the reason for the reduction?
Well, because of the increased cost of supplies and for food, we've had to, and we don't have the additional funding and the supplemental funding. We can't count on that, although we anticipate it. We can't count on that when we're writing our budget. So we had to, at this point in time, starting off this fiscal year, we had to reduce, the number of meals.
Now, did you? Are you asking for an increase in money so that you can purchase more of the supplies?
That's part of the increase in our general fund ask.
Okay, yeah, that was my only concern there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. So how many would it serve, the proposed 3.8, the Meals on Wheels? How many seniors?
Out of the general fund dollars?
Well, out of what you're requesting, yes.
That would keep us where we're at right now. That would allow us to serve the number of meals that we're serving now.
So about 3,000? Or
we serve about 1,700 meals a day.
Okay, so that would just be for lunch, not the dinner meal?
We still can do some of the dinner meals, but we're not going to be able to do as many as we were doing.
Okay, and how many are currently on the waiting list, or would be?
We don't have a waiting list currently. We were able to keep from having a wait list with the supplemental funding, but it will start growing as people start calling in and asking for Meals on Wheels.
What would your estimate be for that wait list?
That's hard to say. I'm concerned because the price of food has gone up and our baby boomers are aging into that age group where they may need in-home meals delivered. So it's really hard to anticipate.
Okay, and do you know why that funding for the next 3 years was not?
Was flat?
Yeah, it was flat.
I can't say that. Yeah, it really is. It comes from the federal government down to AAA. AAA makes the decision regarding the grant, awarding the grants. So.
Okay, so it didn't have anything to do with the application process?
No,
or...
it has to do with the census and the population in each region that they serve. They have a formula that they use to determine the funding.
Because our senior population is only going to grow.
That's correct, yes.
Not decrease.
That's correct.
And then my last question is, and I don't know if you have the answer for this, regarding the handy helpers.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between the handy helpers and the chore program that Ernest talked about earlier?
The Handy Helper is the chore program. A couple years ago, we took the chore program back from under MCA, and we revamped it to be titled the Handy Helper program.
Okay, so there's no two separate programs. The Handy Helper is sort of like the city's opting in.
The chore program for the snow and grass, yes. They're not the same program.
Not the same. They're not. Right, they're two separate programs. I'm sorry, can you come up to the microphone?
Yeah.
I'm Nicole, I'm the program manager. The Chore Cities is the CDBG funds, which is what pays for the grass cutting and snow removal for seniors and those with disabilities. And the Chore AAA dollars is what we retained, and that has a really specific list of allowable services. We can do things like change faucets, wash windows, clean appliances, one-time grass or something like that, but they're very distinct and different programs.
Okay, but they're all both for senior citizens and disabled and income-based?
Handy Helper is senior only.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Senior Services got moved out, the reorganization, to stand alone, to create efficiencies, make it more efficient. Is that right? One of
That's
the
correct.
reasons?
Yes.
Is that why the administration cost is up almost $300,000 from last year?
So part of the efficiency is in the transportation department moving under senior services. They had administration in the transportation department. We had administration in the Office of Senior Services. So we moved those staff over under our purview so that we could minimize the cost, the overhead cost.
Okay. All right. This community liaison person, I think you maybe touched on it earlier. Could you again explain what that person will be doing?
So the community liaison staff are separate from the case management staff. The liaison staff go out to the homes and they're advocates. They go out to the homes, they do assessments and determine what services the seniors need. However, the scope, amount, and duration of services that they can provide is very limited. So they can only provide resources and referrals. They cannot have those seniors for a longer period of time to make sure that they actually receive those benefits. And that's why the case management position was put in place, to really fill that gap, because we have seniors who have long-term needs.
That amount of money that's there, 148, well, that's 104, actually it's dropping next year to 143, but how many liaisons does that provide?
We have 6.
6, okay.
And I think one vacant position.
The congregate nutrition sees a nice increase as well. What's going on there? What's the congregate nutrition? It's up $170,000 from last year.
Mm-hmm.
So what's
in terms
driving
of
that?
staffing, or are you talking about
looking at your
supplies
expenditures,
and
looking at your
expenditures?
budget. Congregate and nutrition side.
Yeah, so the congregate and the Meals on Wheels are our nutrition programs. And so a lot of those increase in costs have to do with supplies, the cost of food, the cost of our contracts with our production kitchens have gone up because it's costing them more to do business, more money to do business.
Okay. Commissioner Mai talked about handy helper. I had a question, so thank you for that, Commissioner. Are you prepared to, if the administration maybe takes a suggestion about doing these senior outreaches where we can provide senior services out in the community like we used to do?
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to do that?
Well, we actually have started some of that. We have an advocate that we have housed at the senior centers throughout the community, all the different senior centers.
Well, I'm familiar with the advocate, but
Yep.
but I want him to be a full-blown senior program that's, with half a day or, at the center itself that provides vaccinations, testing, senior referral services, the whole gamut of senior services.
I would definitely be happy to talk to Andrew about partnering with the health department and seeing what kind of outreach we could do in the community.
I could show you how it's done. I've done it before with the county, so
Okay.
happy to help and happy to help out if it's decided that we can do it that way. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you,
We're
Mr.
always
Chairman.
looking for more programs and outreach.
Well, we don't need
for
more
seniors.
We just want to do the ones we have now well and make sure they're out there and get out in the community. More is not necessarily better, but let's do the ones we have very well and make sure the community gets to them.
Right.
Provide access to them. And that's what it's
Right.
about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Commissioner
Thank you for your
Zinner.
work at the
Thank you, Chair. How many geographical areas in Macomb do you service with this?
We service the entire county.
How many? I mean, how many places?
For our congregate, our dining senior style, I think we have 22 locations, and we're actually opening a new site in Fraser.
And where are the most meals served?
Out of each location, I would have to.
I think the most meals served, which is the large, is there a largest one? Are they pretty much comparable to each other?
They're fairly comparable. There's, I think, some senior housing units that are a little more populated because the seniors actually reside there, and that's where we serve the meals. So
What's the average amount of meals for a lunch? That would be your main meal for an average. How many? Well, I guess we could do the math. So, okay. This volunteering, you have a volunteer calling to check on seniors once a week. I think that's of concern, where before, I think they had them, didn't you have them regularly or at certain times? Or if there's someone wasn't answering, what did you have before?
we didn't have a friendly caller program before COVID. The actual need for it evolved out of the COVID epidemic. We started to call residents to see how they were doing. So, am I not answering that right?
Well, I remember speaking to Ernest about a situation, and
okay.
So I'm not really.
Are you referring to when they call for a meal, when a meal's delivered? And
if someone doesn't answer.
Correct. The handy helper program's different.
Oh,
so
okay.
Sheila
Okay,
can
I can
now
answer that.
answer.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay. Yeah, so what we have in place with the implementation of the tablets, our drivers, when they're out in the community and a senior is not home or they're concerned about a senior, they're able to enter that information right into that tablet, and we get that information on our end almost immediately. We also have a radio in place where if a senior is in trouble or a volunteer finds a senior in trouble, we can radio in to our staff and get an immediate response. We'll call their emergency contact. Each senior has an emergency contact. And so we respond, pretty quickly to those situations.
All right, I understand it could be just they weren't home at that day.
Yeah,
so you
it
have
could
a
be their-
system in place
Yep.
versus when
Yep.
you said someone, if they're not home, that they don't call for a week. I just wondered.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Also, I think you said something about if your funds are cut, you have to decide how to handle. So you went for the more immediate needs for food, or for the citizens for food. So. I know there were people who would drive in for food because it was good. They had good meat. You guys had good meals. You have good meals. And so now these people, although they could drive there, they're seniors. They could be older. I mean, not just because they can drive, they're okay, but they came there and they probably were getting very good nutrition from this, I would imagine.
Yes.
This was the whole idea, is not just because they could get a meal, they would get nutrition, good nutrition. So I'm concerned about this. I don't know what we could do about it. It's something to talk about, I guess, and for us to think about. But that's, I know in Harrison, where I was there for a while, there were a lot of people that would drive for a meal. And it's just something of concern, I think. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First, I'd like to thank you for using volunteers. I think that's an excellent thing. Are any of your volunteers located at senior housing areas?
Yes. We do have some volunteers that actually help out at the sites where other volunteers pick up the meals. So they
What I was going to suggest is possibly having a couple of sites where the seniors who live there are organized to do calling to other seniors. People like having purpose.
Absolutely.
And it makes them feel good, and I think there's health benefits to that. So I don't know about the logistics of it, but I was just thinking that we have a lot of seniors who maybe have idle time and they could call other seniors and maybe help out as volunteers for your program. But you don't want to have to be driving them over to your place.
Yeah, it's a little difficult because of the HIPAA rules and regulations to have personal information of the seniors taken off-site and trying to monitor that. So we're always very conscious about, how that information gets, where that goes and who it goes to and so forth. But,
So the callers need more than just a name and a phone number?
I think on the information that they get, there's an address as well and some demographic information, but it's not, we could certainly consider your idea. Yeah.
Well,
and
name, phone number, and even address, I don't think any HIPAA is there. Maybe
Mhm.
some of the other stuff, but
yeah.
you have some smart programmers who could figure
Yeah.
it out, so I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
And about the 100 tablets, so basically you don't have 100 drivers on the road all at the same time. So I assume some people drive some days and others drive other days, and they have the tablet in their possession all the time.
Mhm.
And you said that you instantly get the information back, so they must be cellular connected or something.
Mhm.
And I only see $3,000 in your utilities. Is the cost for the cellular connections for the 100 tablets covered someplace else?
I believe so. Supplies and services under,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Chair.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. I guess this is for Steve. So when Commissioner Sabatini asked for the list of all the ins and outs from the departments, this is going to be included? Because like Commissioner Brown said, I'm still trying to get my arms around the fact that we're adding over $1.1 million into, from the general fund. Personnel costs are up 32%. And even though we're doing things more streamlined, administrative costs have gone from 200,000 to 500,000.
I have an answer for, I have an answer
None of
for
this
that,
makes sense.
that I was gonna approach after Sheila was done answering questions. Of that $293,000 increase in administration, $250,000 is the indirect cost charges that previously were charged to MCA administration. So actually, you got about a $43,000 increase in the administration cost center.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon.
good afternoon.
Are the seniors you charge for these meals, is that correct?
They're not charged. It's a voluntary contribution,
And what's normally the voluntary contribution solicited?
$3.50.
$3.50. And you have 1,700 meals, you said approximately 1,700 meals.
Yep.
I don't know how the centers work in Warren, or other than Sterling Heights is the only one I'm familiar with. But I know that every senior that has a housing facility in Sterling Heights also has a kitchen. You guys are going to think I'm a bad guy, but I mean, for $3.50, are they looking for the path of least resistance? I mean, is there, what I'm trying to figure out is it's costing us a lot of money for people that maybe don't want to make their meals, because for $3.50 they can get a decent meal. What qualifies them for Meals on Wheels?
Well, for the congregate, the dining
Individual.
sites.
I want to get Meals on Wheels. I'm a senior.
Well, the Meals on Wheels are you have to be homebound. So you're unable to leave your home unassisted. But the congregate dining sites, the dining senior style, you have to be 60 and over.
So when you go, I just want to make sure I got this right. So when you go to these senior centers, which normally they are 60 or older, pretty much of them,
Right.
you bring in abundance of meals, and they
Correct.
disseminate those to the people that are 60 and over. Is that correct?
Yes.
There's no other qualifying other fact of being 60 and over and paying, or wait a minute, you're saying it's a donation of $3.50.
Correct.
Do you get that donation? And how much have you collected last year or this year?
I'd have to look back at our budget to get you that exact number, but it's not, it doesn't cover the cost of the meals, let's
Could you get
say.
those figures for me? And also,
Sure.
I think Commissioner Ziner touched on this, but I'd like to know geographically where most of those meals are going. Are they going to Sterling Heights? Are they going to Center Line? Personal information is where those meals are going. I hate to say this because it makes me sound like a bad guy, but are the seniors taking advantage of us for that $3.50? I mean, is there some way we can save a lot of money in our budget by qualifying them a little closer maybe? I'm asking, I don't know.
Yeah, well, they are assessed, so they do receive an evaluation for the home delivered meals to make sure that they qualify and are eligible for that service. But it's the Older Americans Act, and the standards are in place at that level. So we don't decide what the standards are in terms of whether or not somebody is eligible. It comes from the Older American Act and their regulations. But I understand,
I don't
I
understand that.
understand what you're saying.
I don't understand what you're saying. So, again, I'm going to ask you, what qualifies them? You said being 16 over. If they have a driver's license and an automobile, are they homebound?
They are not, no. So they can go to a dining senior style location and receive a meal.
Do they charge them at that senior community center $3.50 a meal, or is it again a donation?
They're asked for a contribution.
They're asked for a contribution, so they're not. So why don't you ask for $3.50 a meal?
Well, because our funding source will not, it's not, they won't let us do that. Because if somebody can't pay the $3.50, they're still entitled to that meal.
So they'll let you accept. I'm not trying to give you a hard time, honestly.
No,
I'm
that's
just trying
okay.
To get this,
I'm trying to help you understand.
So you're
yeah.
getting, you get the $3.50, but you're not allowed to ask for the $3.50 because your funding source won't allow you to ask for $3.50.
We're not allowed to deny a meal because they don't donate $3.50.
But at the senior centers, they have to come up with $3.50.
No.
No, they don't have to come up
It's
with
a contribution.
Contribution. Okay, if you could, two things, if you would for me, please.
Sure.
The amount of money that you've collected from the Meals on Wheels and geographically where the majority of those meals are, or how they're being disseminated geographically in the county. I would appreciate that. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of my questions was in regards to internal services, so Steve, you already answered that question for me. The only other question I have is your expenditures by service, your community liaison. What specifically does the community liaison, is that one individual? Is that individuals in regards to the $143,000 that's in your budget?
So that's a team of 6 individuals who go out and they actually do the assessment for Meals on Wheels to determine whether or not that individual is homebound, what other services they might need. So they do like an intake assessment to determine what the need is.
Got it. Okay. All right. Sheila, I think I don't see any other questions for you, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that takes us through senior services. Next is correspondence. I'll take items 7A through C.
Point of order, Chair. We need to vote on the motion.
Nope. That would be correct since we've gone through all of them. Please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay, moving on. Correspondence. Item 7A through C.
That's receiving file. Support.
Okay, made by Romano, supported by Farrington. Seeing no questions, please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay, next item is public participation. This is the opportunity for the public to participate. For those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any issue. Anyone from the public like to speak? Going once, twice. We'll close public participation. Next is commissioner comments. Commissioner Haw, I see you on my
trade.
Did you want to speak?
Please.
Commissioner Haw.
2 things. I think we had a document, I'm not sure, of the 83 positions that have been requested within the county and by what department had requested additional headcount. If we don't have that, I would like to have that before we get into some of the final discussions of where we're going. Please. I don't know if Steve provided that to us, if it's here. No? Okay, then I would like to have that. Secondly, we all received an explanation letter on the, email on the history of Martha Teaberry and the roles and responsibilities the county plays versus the board plays. I would encourage everyone to read that at least once, because I read it twice and stopped on a third attempt. So if you can figure it out, I'd be happy to hear it, but nevertheless, it's going to be critical going into our budgetary discussion. That's all I have, Chair.
I'm just updating my screen. I apologize, Commissioner, you didn't come up on the that other item, so. Okay, seeing no other speakers for Commissioner.
Support.
Made by Romano, supported by Haw. Please vote. Thank you, everybody.
Nice job, Mr.
Motion
Chairman.
passes 12 to 0.